to amend the Liquor Control Act. Good.
Mr. Smith has moved second reading of Bill 67, an act to amend the Liquor Control Act. Pursuant to Standing Order 98, the member has 12 minutes for his presentation. The member for Prince Edward Hastings.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's an honor to rise today to speak to the Raise a Glass to Ontario Act. When I was first a candidate back in the 2011 election, I went into Prince Edward County and I met with several winery owners there. And they highlighted a couple of different things for me, Speaker. First, they felt that they didn't have the access to the retail market that was necessary for the industry to grow. And second, they felt that regulations around the transportation of their product were ridiculously out of date. Many of the people that I met on that trip to the county have remained friends and valuable sources of information ever since. Whether it was Carolyn Granger from the Grange of Prince Edward County, Lanny Huff from Huff's Estates, or Richard Carlo from Carlo Estates. In fact, I was thinking about this in my office just the other day. If I had to do one thing over again, I think I might change the name of this act. Many times in this House, Mr. Speaker, I've gotten to my feet and taken a poke at the government for introducing bills with great names that really don't do much. So I wanted to introduce a bill with a great name that actually did something. If this bill gets to committee, Mr. Speaker, I think I might amend one thing, and that would be the name. You see, my friend Richard Carlo lost his battle with cancer last year. And within 2 years of opening Carlo Estates, he had made that winery profitable in Prince Edward County, something that's almost unheard of when we talk about the wine industry, and my heart goes out to his wife Sherry Martin as well. Rick's wines made it to the wine list at the Royal York Hotel and the Toronto International Film Festival. He fought the LCBO's Cellared in Canada labeling, which would have given a marketing advantage to wines where up to 99% of the grapes harvested for a particular wine could be grown outside of Canada. And last year, after we lost the election, I went into my office and there was an email from Richard, and he'd watched the results come in. He told me to keep my chin up, and he said, "You should think about running for the party." And advice that was indicative of the incomparable King Richard that I met in 2011 described him in the National Post as the Indiana Jones of the Ontario wine industry. I didn't take his advice, Mr. Speaker, and here we are today. I know it's strange to lead off a discussion of your own bill by talking about one thing that you might like to change, but Speaker, I think this bill should probably be called the Richard Carlo Act. That having been said, there's a lot packed into this bill that would help the beverage alcohol industry in this province grow and create more jobs, and I think we all want that. In 2014, the Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario conducted a report to review the regulatory regime surrounding beverage alcohol in Ontario. In that report, the AGCO looked at a number of regulatory changes put forth by proponents seeking to make changes to the way our growing beverage alcohol industry does business. Back when I used to call OHL games, Mr. Speaker, there used to be a rule of thumb for an OHL franchise, an Ontario Hockey League franchise. 1/3 of the franchises made money, 1/3 broke even, and the final third lost money. And I sat down with the Prince Edward County Wine Growers Association over the recess this winter and was told that the reality for Ontario Hockey League clubs isn't all that different for wine growers either. The bigger operations seem to make some money. Some of them actually make a lot of money. And the more medium-sized wineries with strong regional presence do a little better than breaking even, but for many vintners in Ontario, their winery is quite literally a labor of love, and I hear from those people all the time that they do it because they love it, not because they're getting rich. Their profits are their vintages at the end of the day. Many of them labor for years to produce a great Pinot Noir or an award-winning Chardonnay. The question has to be, how can we make it possible for some of these great Ontario products to end up in the hands of Ontario customers either at special events or at restaurants across the province? And one way is to loosen some of the transportation regulations regarding the delivery of alcohol. As the AGCO report itself states, it was therefore suggested that the relevant regulation should be amended to permit liquor delivery services to offer their services to business customers. Presently, if the Grange in Prince Edward, which is a great winery, is making a delivery of product on a truck that's half full, it can't pick up products from other wineries or pick up products from this craft distillery in Prince Edward County and drop it off at the same point, which seems ludicrous to me. The two companies must contract the vehicle of a third-party company to do this. The wineries in particular in the county are used to working together because they have the Prince Edward County Wine Growers Association. So if one were to deliver to a restaurant in Belleville or Kingston or Ottawa, delivering alongside other wineries, or the County Cider Company, which has a great Wapoose cider, they're right now forbidden by regulation if those products are on the same vehicle. It just doesn't make any sense. As the AGCO also states, the existing regulation with direct delivery to licensees already causes problem and a decrease in business for the producers. So when I go to a restaurant here in Toronto, Mr. Speaker, if I want to order wine, I usually have a choice between maybe one or two, maybe three of the wineries from Prince Edward County. I might be able to order a Huff's, I might be able to order a Sandbanks or a Casadei or maybe a Carlo, but we have so many other great wineries in Prince Edward County whose access to market is being inhibited by the current structure and the current setup. So that brings me to the second major facet of the bill, which is cross-selling. To quote once again from the government's own AGCO report, proposals include allowing breweries to sell the beer of other beer manufacturers at their on-site brewery retail stores, which they call cross-selling. Recently in this province, we've had an ongoing discussion about the retail sale of beer. It's been a hot topic, Mr. Speaker, and right now, if you want to buy a beer in Ontario, you have three options. You can buy it at the beer store, the LCBO, or on the site that it's brewed. That's it, the retail store at the on-brewery site. If you're a craft brewer in this province, that means that the only retail options outside of your brewery are controlled by either the government or your major competitors. No other product has this type of retail environment that is this constrained, and that's a shame. We've seen a boom in the craft beer growth in the United States. In states like New York and Oregon, the number of craft breweries there have taken off, and they're not just making great beer, Mr. Speaker, they're creating jobs in those states. But here in Ontario, once again, the transportation and retailing regulations make it hard to grow a business. I can order almost any great Ontario craft beer here in Toronto or buy it at the LCBO, but back home at Earl and Angelo's Steakhouse in downtown Belleville or the Waring House in Picton, you'd be lucky to find options much beyond a Steam Whistle or a Mill Street if you're looking for a craft beer. Not that there's anything wrong with those products, they're great, but there's so many other out there that we should be opening up the market to. Last summer, Mr. Speaker, I was having a barbecue with some friends and I wanted to stock up on some Twice as Mad Tom, which is a great craft beer from Muskoka. You can find it here in Toronto, Mr. Speaker. Within a half-hour drive of my house in the Sterling area, there are 8 LCBOs and there are 4 beer stores. You think I could find Twice as Mad Tom at any of those stores, Mr. Speaker? No, I couldn't. Under this bill, Barley Days Brewery, which is in my riding in the Picton area, would be able to, as a member of the Ontario Craft Beer Association, to stock Muskoka products at their on-site brewery store. Effectively, this would turn these stores from showrooms for a single label, right, into small private craft beer stores across the province. It would allow wineries and distilleries to do the same thing if they so choose. The AGCO report noted that small brewers in particular would welcome this opportunity. The final piece is the introduction of a warehousing system outside of the current LCBO system. If we're going to loosen the direct delivery regulations to allow businesses to expand, we have to be serious about it. And if you're a brewer in Kitchener or a winery on the south coast, say in Norfolk or Essex counties, but you've got a licensee in Ottawa or Sudbury interested in your product, same-day service is pretty much logistically impossible. However, if you are on the Manufacturers Association to which you belong and you have licenses and bonded warehouse spaces available, you have the ability to not only expand but grow province-wide as a brand if you can meet the demand. That's the kind of market that we should be establishing for Ontario-grown products. There's a winery in Prince Edward County called Casa Dea Estates. My friend Paul Marconi runs that winery. You know Paul, he's a good guy. It's near Wellington. And thanks to changes in legislation last year, the government made some changes. Paul is now able to showcase his wares at the farmers market up on the Byward in Ottawa on weekends. But here's the ridiculousness of the rest of that story, Mr. Speaker. If he wants to stick around after the Saturday sale and sell again on Sunday, he has to pack up his bottles of wine, he has to drive all the way back to his winery in Wellington, and then drive back to Ottawa the next morning to sell again. If he tried to store his wine overnight in his truck or in his van, he'd be violating the Liquor Control Act. That's how out of date our alcohol regulations are in the province of Ontario. I hope that members of the House will support this bill, help me modernize regulations that are holding back some great Ontario businesses, open up consumer choice for Ontarians. There's so much opportunity here, Mr. Speaker. The craft brewers are behind this. They want this. They want to be able to cross-sell their products. The Prince Edward County wineries and those in Niagara, the Wine Growers Association of Ontario, they're behind it. The Wine Council of Ontario, is behind this. The Wine Council would love to see this happen. In Prince Edward County, when you travel over the Norris Whitney Bridge from Belleville into the county, as I say, there are 40 different wineries there, Mr. Speaker. Tourists are coming from Ottawa, they're coming from Montreal, they're coming from Toronto, they're coming from the Quinte region to go into Prince Edward County. There are 40 wineries. They might only have time in the day to hit 3 or 4 or 5 of those wineries, but they might like the opportunity to sample products from other wineries that they're unable to get to because their vacation just isn't that long. This would give them the opportunity to have Prince Edward County boutique wineries where they could sell products from their competitors. They could bring in products from Niagara. They could bring in products from Norfolk and from Essex down in Peely Island. It's time to make some changes. They're long overdue, Mr. Speaker. Free our suds and raise a glass to Ontario. Thank you.
Thank you. Further debate, the member for Timmins, James Bay.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I just want to say in the